They arrested the wrong black teen. What happened next shocked everyone. It was 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday when 16-year-old Marcus Davis walked out of Lincoln High School, calculus textbook tucked under his arm, completely unaware that his life was about to change forever. The honor roll student had just finished tutoring freshman algebra when he heard the screech of tires behind him. 2 police cruisers pulled up, and before Marcus could even process what was happening, Officer Jake Morrison was out of his car, hand on his weapon. "Stop right there. Put your hands where I can see them." Marcus froze, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Around him, students began pulling out their phones, sensing something was terribly wrong. His best friend Sarah rushed toward him, but Officer Morrison's partner, Officer Chen, held up a warning hand. "Marcus, what's going on?" Sarah called out, her voice trembling. But Marcus couldn't answer. He was staring down the barrel of systematic prejudice that he'd only heard about in hushed conversations at the dinner table. His father's warnings echoed in his mind: keep your hands visible, don't make sudden movements, comply completely. Before we continue with this shocking story, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from around the world. And if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button because stories like this need to be heard. Now, back to what happened to Marcus. Officer Morrison approached with his handcuffs ready. "You match the description of a suspect who just robbed the corner store on 5th Street. Turn around, hands behind your back." "Officer, there's been a mistake," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. "I've been in school all day. I was tutoring in room 204. Mrs. Patterson can verify that. Save it for downtown, kid." The metal handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through the crowd of gathering students. Several of them began shouting in his defense. "That's Marcus Davis. He's valedictorian. He's been here all day. Check the security cameras." But Officer Morrison wasn't listening. He had tunnel vision, focused only on the description he'd received. Black male, approximately 5 feet 8 inches, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. Marcus fit 2 of those descriptors, and in Morrison's mind, that was enough. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus's calculus teacher, pushed through the crowd. "Officer, you're making a serious mistake. Marcus has been in my classroom since 2:30. I can show you the sign-in sheet for the tutoring session." "Ma'am, step back. This is police business." As Marcus was led toward the patrol car, he caught sight of his reflection in the window. The same dark hoodie he wore every day, a gift from his grandmother with "Future Engineer" embroidered on the front. The same jeans he'd worn to school that morning after carefully ironing them the night before. The same face that smiled back at him from honor roll photos lining the school's main hallway. The car door slammed shut, and Marcus found himself in the back of a police cruiser for the first time in his life. Through the window, he could see students recording everything, their faces a mixture of shock and outrage. Some were already on their phones, likely calling their parents, probably posting on social media. What Marcus didn't know was that 8 blocks away, the real perpetrator was still on the run. 18-year-old Kevin Torres had just ditched his dark hoodie in a dumpster behind Murphy's Deli and was cutting through Riverside Park when he spotted another police car approaching. Panicking, he grabbed the first hoodie he found hanging on a park bench, ironically, the exact same brand and color as Marcus's. Back at the police station, Marcus sat in an interrogation room, still handcuffed, still trying to process what was happening. Officer Morrison placed a grainy security photo on the table. "Recognize this guy?" Marcus leaned forward and studied the image. Even through the poor quality, he could see this person was clearly older, taller, and had completely different facial features. "Officer, that's not me. Look at the timestamp. I was in calculus class when this happened. Call the school. Check their records." "Funny how you all have the same story," Morrison muttered, making notes in his file. Meanwhile, Officer Chen was having doubts. Something about the kid's demeanor, his grades, the way the teachers had rushed to defend him, it didn't add up. He'd been doing this job for 12 years, and his gut was telling him they had the wrong person. While Marcus waited in that cold room, his mother Jennifer was racing through traffic, her hands shaking as she gripped the steering wheel. The call from the school had turned her world upside down. Her son, her brilliant, kind, responsible son, arrested like a common criminal. At the same time, Kevin Torres was getting sloppy. Still wearing the stolen hoodie, he decided to hit another store. Big mistake. The clerk at Peterson's pharmacy had already been alerted about the earlier robbery, and when Kevin walked in, hood up, hands in his pockets, the clerk immediately hit the silent alarm. This time, the responding officers were thorough. They found the cash from the first robbery still in Kevin's backpack, along with the receipt from his morning purchase at a convenience store that placed him in the area at the exact time of the crime. Officer Rodriguez, who responded to the pharmacy call, immediately radioed back to the station. "We got him. Kevin Torres, 18, matches the actual description, has the stolen money, and confessed to both robberies. You need to release that kid you picked up." Back in the interrogation room, Officer Morrison's radio crackled to life. Marcus watched the officer's face change as he listened to the message. The confidence drained away, replaced by something Marcus had never seen in an adult's eyes when looking at him: embarrassment. "There's been a development," Morrison said slowly. 20 minutes later, Marcus walked out of the police station to find a crowd waiting for him. Students from his school, neighbors from his community, and his mother, whose tears of relief mixed with tears of rage. "I'm sorry this happened to you, son," Officer Morrison said as he personally removed the handcuffs. "We made an error in judgment." But Marcus wasn't looking at Morrison. He was looking at the crowd, at the phone still recording, at the injustice that had just played out in broad daylight. This wasn't just an error in judgment. This was racial profiling at its most blatant. The story exploded on social media within hours. #JusticeForMarcus began trending nationally. The security footage from the school, the timeline of events, and Marcus's impeccable record made it impossible to deny what had really happened. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn that shocked everyone. 3 days after the incident, Marcus received an unexpected visitor at his home. Officer Jake Morrison stood on the front porch, out of uniform, holding a letter in his trembling hands. "Marcus, I need to talk to you," he said when Marcus answered the door. They sat in the living room, with Marcus's parents present, as Morrison spoke words that would change everything. "I was wrong. Not just about you being the suspect. I was wrong about everything. I let my prejudices, my assumptions, cloud my judgment. You could have been my own son sitting in that interrogation room, and I failed you as a police officer and as a human being." Morrison went on to explain that he'd grown up in a predominantly white suburb, that his training had emphasized being suspicious, and that somewhere along the way, he'd internalized biases he didn't even realize he had. "I can't undo what happened to you, but I want to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else." What happened next shocked the entire community. Instead of accepting Morrison's apology and moving on, Marcus made a proposal that seemed impossible. "If you really want to make this right, help me turn this into something bigger." And so began an unlikely partnership. Marcus and Officer Morrison started speaking at schools together, sharing their story from both perspectives. Marcus talked about the fear, the humiliation, and the lasting impact of being profiled. Morrison talked about unconscious bias, the need for better training, and the courage it takes to examine your own prejudices. Their presentations were raw, honest, and uncomfortable. Morrison didn't hold back about his mistakes, and Marcus didn't sugarcoat the trauma of the experience. But together, they created something powerful, a real conversation about race, justice, and the possibility of change. The program they developed, Bridging the Badge, became a model for police departments across the country. They trained officers to recognize bias, taught de-escalation techniques, and most importantly, brought community members and police together for honest dialogue. Marcus went on to win a full scholarship to MIT, where he studied criminal justice reform alongside engineering. But he never forgot that afternoon when his life changed forever. He used his experience as fuel, turning pain into purpose and trauma into transformation. Officer Morrison became one of the department's most requested speakers on bias training. He faced criticism from some colleagues who thought he was being too hard on law enforcement, but he never wavered in his commitment to change. 2 years later, when Marcus graduated as valedictorian, Officer Morrison was in the audience. When Marcus spoke about resilience, justice, and the power of unlikely alliances, he looked directly at Morrison and said, "Sometimes the person who hurts you can become the person who helps heal others." The arrest that should have destroyed Marcus's faith in the system instead strengthened his resolve to fix it. The officer who made the worst mistake of his career found redemption in admitting his wrongs and working to prevent others from making the same errors. Their story didn't end with an apology or even with forgiveness. It ended with action, with change, and with the understanding that justice isn't just about punishing the wrong, it's about creating a system where those wrongs are less likely to happen in the first place. Marcus's case led to policy changes in the school district, requiring officers to verify information with school officials before making arrests on campus. It led to new training protocols that emphasized investigation over assumption. Most importantly, it started conversations in living rooms, classrooms, and police stations about the reality of racial bias in America. Today, Marcus is a successful engineer and justice advocate. Officer Morrison still serves on the force, but now as a trainer and community liaison. They still speak together, sharing their story with anyone willing to listen. The young man who was handcuffed for a crime he didn't commit became a voice for change. The officer who made the arrest became an ally in the fight for justice. And their unlikely partnership became proof that even in our most divided moments, understanding and progress are possible. This story shows us that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about prevention, education, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Marcus Davis was arrested for the crime of fitting a description while black, but he refused to let that define him. Instead, he defined what it means to turn injustice into action. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Real change happens when real stories reach real people. And Marcus's story, our story, is far from over. What started as the worst day of a teenager's life became the first day of a movement. Because sometimes, being arrested for the wrong reasons can lead to fighting for all the right ones.